are Living the Authentic Life podcast. Rob and I are so excited to have our friend, Dr. Haresh Yalamanchili, with us today. He is the person that keeps my face and neck looking young.
I didn't know you spent any money doing that.
Exactly. And he's a friend of ours. We connected in Colorado. And if you guys follow us, you know that's our happy place in life. So we met actually through mutual friends and had dinner and all of that together before I even realized how incredible he was. But before we get started, big shout out to Adam Andrus. Yay! Our sound engineer. He keeps us sounding great. You keep me looking great. Rob keeps me happy. I'm so blessed in the middle of a pandemic to have all this great things. And that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is figure out our new reality, how we maneuver this, how we stay connected, how we take care of ourselves in this situation. And I've been we just drove back and forth to Colorado, and we've been listening twice. We've been listening to books on tape. Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers, Angela Duckworth, Grit. And you are an incredible example of grit and tenacity to have gone to Cornell and become such a respected...
Georgetown also. I spent a lot of time in school. I was looking at him going, it took me 6 years to get my undergrad, all right? But it was that 2.0 was a good grade. You spent how many years in college?
College took 4 years, but
med
whole
school
journey, another 4, and then residency.
Intern, registered,
5 years plus 1. Yeah, it's a lot. You know, I always joke when I tell kids going to medicine. If someone had told me when I was graduating from high school that I wasn't quite halfway done, I don't know if I would have turned around. Maybe. I mean, it's a long road, but you know, it's when you're done with it. You know, interestingly enough, your first day when you're operating on your own, take off the training wheels. You still have a lot of questions. You know, it's crazy. After all that training, you're still nervous. You're still like, oh my God, do I have enough training? So I understand why it takes that long. And you know, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, when you start at even medical school at 22, 23, and you end up practicing, your first, true case maybe at 29 or 30. I mean, think about how much you change as a person and what you thought you knew going into it and where you end up. It's incredible how much it changes. And so...
Well, you have a 14 and 16-year-old. We have a 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, you think you know everything. And then I feel like as you grow older, you realize there's so much for you to learn and you know nothing. And then what your parents said to you thought was so stupid now makes sense.
Parents are pretty darn smart.
Yeah.
They are. I know. Sweet Vic and Nancy, we loved spending time with them. Well, I'm going to read a little bit about your bio. You are dual board certified facial plastic surgeon, and he's one of a small group of cosmetic surgeon specialists who've been chosen to focus solely on treating the face and neck. He attended Cornell, as we said, where he had his bachelor's in neurobiology and English, and we'll talk about that too. And then he went on to earn his master's in physiology and biophysics from Georgetown, and then he remained in D.C. and received his medical degree from Georgetown University. And then you ended up in New York City, and were had a residency with head and neck surgery at New York Eye and Ear Infirmary. By the way, his amazing, sassy, fabulous, beautiful wife is also a doctor.
She is. She's an ophthalmologist. Yep.
Yes.
So I dragged her up to New York City. She's a Houston girl, but I had to drag her up for a little bit.
So did you guys meet when you were in residency?
We met in medical school, but the story is we were at different medical schools. She was in upstate New York, and I was in D.C., and her cousin is a very dear friend of mine, and we were tearing it up, and I don't know how long. I don't want to take up the whole story with this, but... the short version is we met on a cruise in Alaska, believe it or not.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
that Rob's happy place.
I'm going to Alaska next week, and I've been going on my annual trip for the last 30 years. It's usually 1 week, but sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. Where do you go?
I go to anywhere from the base of Denali and Anchorage area to southeast Alaska to... I'm really mad at salmon. and really, really mad at halibut also.
Yeah, well, you
So
should be.
I'll go up and I'll bring home 100 pounds of fillets and fish and
Wow.
just go away. And sometimes my phone doesn't work where I am,
Yeah,
but there are other times they do work, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my address, so make sure some of it makes my way.
Not a
That's
problem at
great
all.
to
I know we need to
Wow.
plan a dinner party. And you're friends with our cousin John, who was our first podcast guest.
Another doctor.
Wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
He's a great
you
guy.
guys.
Big shoes to fill. Yeah.
Did you meet socially?
Yeah, actually, my brother works with him at the lab, and so
Okay.
that's how I met John. And I mean, he's a hard guy not to love. So we get to try out some of the restaurants in town and get together to powwow a little bit because he's got a great entrepreneurial mind, and he's a lot of fun to talk with. So, and it was random that we figured out. I can't remember how we figured that out.
Okay, well, the most random thing is, as I said, we met each other, and then we would run into each other at charity events.
Right.
And I can't remember. So it was you've been in a couple fashion shows was it Recipe for Success?
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
And then also you did Beau's Place with
Yep.
Una Note.
Yep, that's right.
But I think that we met at the Recipe for Success at Marie Penner's, and then sat next to each other at a
Yes, at
tequila
dinner.
dinner.
Yes,
and
that's
Rob
right.
was out of town. And then we went out to dinner in Beaver Creek. And then we're at a political function, and I'm talking to you because you're Haresh with the last name I couldn't remember. And I looked down and I said, oh my God, I have an appointment with you
That's right.
tomorrow. I had no idea that was your last name. I mean, I knew that you were an incredible doctor, but I didn't put it together. So let's dive into that because that's what women and a lot of the men listening are curious about.
Sure.
It is such an evasive thing, and we as Texas ladies are talked about around the country as we love our plastic surgery. But I feel like this younger, I'm going to call myself younger even though
Absolutely.
I'm 52, we don't want to look like we do anything. And I have not done plastic surgery on my face, although I have done plastic surgery. But I have not done it yet. But I came to you to talk about staying looking young and natural. And I think that's what your specialty is. And what I love about when we met and my girlfriend and I came together, which I know you're like, two of you? And
It happens a lot.
It
yeah.
does. Okay. So we went in together and we're like, okay, tell us. Like, when do you get your first plastic surgery? When does it go beyond microneedling or whatever? And it's such a curious thing that people don't. And so it's a broad question, but kind of tell what you told us when we started, because women want to know, and some men.
Some men do want to know.
Many men want to know. I mean, I think since we have about 40 minutes, 45 minutes to talk, it's probably worth taking a step back because that is what I hear a lot, right? What do I need? What can I get done to look young? And I mean, my knee-jerk response to that is always, you don't need anything that I offer, right? And it's true when you think about it. And I don't mean that to sound, like just trying to flatter someone. I mean that truly, right? It's an elective procedure. So no one truly needs anything that I do, but something obviously made them call me and make the effort to come in and visit with me. And so it's trying to understand what that is, right? And so this idea of, holding on to our youth or looking younger, I don't think that's the actual reason why people are doing this. I think we think that is, we're trying to look younger and hold on to it, but that's impossible, right? You're not going to really be able to look like you did when you were 25 and you're 50 now, right? It's not going to happen. And I think pursuing that for that end can be dangerous, frankly, right? Where you're setting yourself up for failure, where you want to hold on to something you're never going to get.
No, and I've seen the horror stories in Joan Rivers. I mean, how she turned more and more to a Siamese cat with all the surgery and that is not what you do at all.
Botched that show. I mean, that.
Yeah.
And that's on your list of things you do. That's a big part of your
It
business too,
is.
is fixing the problems.
Fixing mistakes.
It
Other
is.
people's mistakes.
Yep. And you'd think that mistakes happen only because of bad technique or someone not knowing what they're doing. I think some of the mistakes also happen because, they should have, the surgeon or the doctor probably should have said, no, this is not what's going to make you happy, or this is not what you need. Or, I think trying to lead someone down to a path where they're probably not going to get what they really need in terms of being happy. So when we're talking about, what we're trying to do, are we trying to make people look, beautiful or youthful? I mean, yes, but, right? I mean, what is beauty? it sounds like a silly, cliche or, kind of a, a question that's sort of vague, but really sort of what it comes down to, right? Is that what are we trying to do in terms of making someone beautiful? Is it symmetry? Is it proportion? All these things, these standards and ideals. And that's definitely something that, you have to use as a guideline when you're trying to work on someone and trying to help them look their best. But it is an objective thing, which is what most people would think it is, but it's also a very subjective thing. And what I mean is, there is certainly something, some people that you're going to find beautiful or you might find attractive that other people might not agree with. Yes, you have these universal standards, models, probably across cultures and generations, and you look at pictures, you say that person is very attractive. But style changes from generation to generation or from culture to culture. There are other things that are more, not vague, but less defined. But still, that's all external. The internal part of beauty, and this is going to sound hokey probably or cheesy, but I think there's some truth to it, is feeling beautiful, right? Feeling good looking or handsome or attractive. And that ultimately is confidence in so many ways, right? And when you think about this, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, hopefully that's obvious, we assume that how we look is how people react to us. And that is true to an extent, right? People interact with us and react to us by how we look externally. But when I do my work, and hopefully successful work, I am trying to create change, but the irony is it shouldn't look like there's much change.
Absolutely.
Right?
Like, you don't want people to go, what did you have done?
Right.
The biggest compliment that I think is for people to say, oh, you look so rested, or you look happy, or something like that, as opposed to, what did you have done?
Well, yes, definitely. Generally speaking, I'm not excited when people get asked that question, because it's probably, it's probably not for the right reasons, typically, right? But I think even more than people noticing it consciously, I think people around us notice it subconsciously. Notice that, hey, we feel like $1 million because we feel like we look that way, and I think that's as important as how you actually look. And it sounds vague, it sounds kind of new agey, but I'm positive of it, because when you think about the people around you in your life, your friends, people that you see, you don't actually judge them physically that much, right? You actually, the people you know the best, you don't even look at that carefully, right? I know you notice every time she comes back and gets her hair done, but most men are not that obvious.
I notice more often when I see new shoes and then I'm waiting for the Neiman's bill to show up.
Fair enough. There's a different pressure point with that one,
No, but when she's had some procedures done before in the past, and we're out at a dinner party or dinner with friends, and this, and one of my buddies goes, "Your wife looks the same as she when you got married," but they don't think she's had a procedure done. It's just funny. She's like, she hasn't aged, which is nice that they're noticing that, but it's so subtle. I like that subtle. Approach.
Absolutely. There has to be something physical, obviously, right? You have to create some change when I'm working on this. I don't mean to imply that there's no difference. It's just to find that sweet spot where you do make it look better objectively, but really, that doesn't mean everyone needs a facelift. And that's I guess the important point, right? Is there's so many tools that we have available, and it might mean you're just taking care of your skin. It might mean that you just dress well and you feel good about this, your suit or your dress or your makeup or whatever it is, your accessories, and it makes you feel good about yourself. You stand taller. You just project a different vibe, which is what people pick up on. I'm confident that's the case.
Yep, it's the vibe. And it is so connected to so many things. And over the last 2 years, I went through a meditation series. I've always read so many books about self-worth, and Brene Brown, if you know me, that she's my absolute idol about vulnerability and sharing and openness and not creating bad stories in your head. And it has absolutely changed. So when people say, well, what have you done? Yes, my hair is lighter. Yes, I do more to keep my skin feeling young. But I also am happy. I found joy. And I think that well-being, I've Googled this. I'm writing a inspirational speech and working with the speechwriter, and I'm going to talk to the Whitehall group, give
good.
my first speech on September 28th. But I have been diving in it. Like, I have researched, Rob knows, hundreds of hours. And as much as people want to buy from us, same thing. They come in to buy a Birkin, and they're like, oh, I'm going to have to put it on all these credit cards. There was one woman, and I said, I want you to have this, but I want you to know that if you have to do that, it might actually make you uncomfortable. And I don't want you to think this bag is going to make you happy. And so it is. Like, what we offer is not going to be
It's not the
total.
panacea.
But
It's-
I have to say, when I carry a new bag, I am strutting my stuff and I feel
bet you are.
fabulous. And I mean, just even getting a new dial on my watch makes me happy. But it's not what is the basis of my happiness. It is so many layers of well-being and meditation and believing in God and
Maybe,
a better relationship with your spouse and like
Visiting the psychiatrist for our tutorial sessions.
yeah,
or
we
our
go meet with somebody.
tune-ups,
So
I
it's
call
not
it.
like I look at you as one of my coaches. Like I would back in the day had a personal trainer or a Pilates coach, and then I had someone that helped me with meditation, and I go to a priest or whatever. You're one of those people in my life that help me because I've worked hard to reach this place and be successful, and I've given back to the community, and I feel like you're part of that cog in the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying because I couldn't agree more. It's part of a spectrum,
Yes.
and I think we're talking about authenticity, right? I mean, kind of what makes
Yes.
someone authentic or what makes our life authentic, and absolutely, I think the pursuit of a lifelong pursuit of trying to optimize or improve ourselves intellectually, spiritually, physically. That's all part of the same thing. If you're working out, yes, it's great to get healthy, of course, right? But working out and getting toned arms doesn't necessarily mean you're going to live longer. You do that because it also makes you feel better, and a lot of great habits come along with the discipline to work out. So you take care of, and I actually did a study on this a long time ago. People who had facelifts would start engaging in better health lifestyles, right? Like working out more regularly, using sunblock, eating better, because it's an investment. When you take that
Yes.
investment and that time to both financially and physically to go through this event, this change, you're more likely to commit to it.
Because
Right, I mean,
you're focused on your overall well-being.
It's part of it, absolutely. And so it's part of the spectrum, and it doesn't mean everyone needs what I do. Most people will go through their lives just as happily not ever coming to see me. And so I don't, but it's part of a process where in, I think, many people's cases, it can help fit into that lifelong pursuit of how do I be the best version of me that I can be. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the existing version. It just means that you were trying to self-improve. I think that's what being human's really about. And I think our whole lives, the happiest people I know are the ones who are constantly striving to improve themselves and know themselves better and improve, and I think that's what you're talking about.
And that's what actually I said to you, and I came with a girlfriend. I said, when you said, what do you want? And I said, I want to look like I look now as long as possible. I wasn't really looking, but I mean, certainly you're getting more sagging. You're seeing the chin. This phone, when you turn it on backwards, and I don't know any woman my age, but I even was talking to Danette, who's 30-something. I don't think anyone loves when you catch yourself in the reverse on your phone and you see what you see.
Yeah, I can't
And
tell
so
you.
I think that's hard too. Is like we're in a place now. We're watching Outlander, which is back in the 1700s. They weren't taking a picture of themselves every day.
Nope.
Now we're
Did you notice there's no mirrors in that whole show either?
I
There's
know.
Yeah, when we walk into our store or our house, we've
we're
got mirrors
looking at
everywhere.
ourselves
And our
all
phone's a mirror.
day.
Absolutely. And we get to tweak that mirror now.
Oh,
When you
yes.
send it out to everyone else. I mean, with obviously with filters and Photoshop, and it kind of goes back to the philosophical question about how do you deal with that, right? Because it's almost like these mirrors are not weakening us, but creating this dissonance, right? We're like, I don't feel like this, but I look like this. What do I do about it? And so that's sort of, to me, a balancing act where I want to be able to help people who are feeling like that, but I also don't want us to be slave to that feeling and saying, well, I can't be happy unless my jowls are totally gone.
Exactly.
Right?
And
That's not good
I
either.
think the biggest thing that I've heard from everybody I've ever worked with, and I love working with Nina Desai at Renew Laser. She's been a great help for me in my journey, and she said the same thing to me, is it's product and it's sunscreen. Every single doctor I respect has always said it's keeping your skin that you have as healthy as possible. So let's talk about
Sure.
what that looks like to you and what you recommend as a basic. Like today,
Yeah.
I told Rob, I'm buying my basic products that I'm going to use, and what that is for someone, say, my age.
So, I mean, you're right. I think most people are going to agree with that in the aesthetic field because it is the first step in the ladder, first of all, right? It's pretty easy to do. Most of us can spend the time to just take a few minutes out of your routine to do this. And it's, when most of what I do, interestingly, is reparative, right? It's after the fact. You're trying to fix something that's already changed. So there are actually a handful of things that we can do, not many, but that can prevent.
Yes.
And number one on that list is taking care of your skin from sun damage, from environmental damage. So that's why skincare and sunblock is such an important thing. The other thing, interestingly, that you can do to help prevent, one of the few things, is Botox. And we can talk about that too a little bit later if
Yeah,
you'd
let's
like.
talk about it. We can talk about it now because I feel like I kind of started late on Botox. I don't know that there's an age to start, but for so long I just had this idea, like I didn't even color my hair till I was in my 30s, and I didn't I was like, oh, I've got to wait to do Botox, and what is that? What's it going to do in your body? Like, that's what people
Right.
say. That's
Well,
what
that's
my
a
mom
fair-
said to me. You're putting toxins in your face today. I'm like, yes! Isn't it great?
And her forehead's not moving when she's talking about it. Yes.
But my forehead does
Your forehead
move.
moves now. Yes.
And it always has.
But with the person before, possibly it didn't move. There was
Okay,
a time
good.
or two.
So it's actually kind of, in my mind, an extension of the skincare conversation, right? So you ask what kind of skincare can you use? So a good broad spectrum sunblock. Most people can benefit from a retinol, which is basically helps the skin turn over more effectively and help build collagen, and antioxidants like vitamin C to help with sun damage. So there's a pretty
And I
pretty
want to say, your
consistent thing.
retinol did not make me peel in a way that was
Good.
concerning. And other retinols I've had, because there's different percentages of retinol.
Sure. I mean, you got to find the right product for the right person, and that hopefully most of the good physicians out there will help you figure that out. But those are first steps, like I said, right? So why does Botox kind of fit into skincare? Well, because Botox, as everyone knows, most people know, I hope, it helps soften up certain lines and wrinkles, right? It's helping relax overactive muscles. Now, if you don't happen to make certain expressions, like if you're not always frowning every time you're looking at your phone or reading a book, then you probably might not need it. But people who are always kind of scrunching their eyebrows together, eventually are going to have like these deep lines that form. It's like a dollar bill that you take and you fold 1,000 times, you get a crease.
Yes.
Right? And so once the crease forms, it's really hard to get rid of. So that's where you might find benefit in something like Botox, where you're helping prevent that line from forming. But to Rob's point, you have to balance that with still looking natural, still being able to make some expressions.
Where
still
the eyebrows move, or the
yeah,
forehead
right. I
will
mean,
move
being
a
able
little,
to
yes.
show. So that's just the balancing act that I have to, or anyone who does this has to kind of find, where you're getting the good out of it, but not introducing bad problems, meaning making someone look unnatural or frozen or stiff or just.
And I want to mention that too, because I have this little place above my eye that's like indented
That
here.
little scar right there.
And we've talked about like how we manage that, and you said just because I clear that up, then there might be another
Right.
thing that happens because of that. And I think that's where the technology really comes into it. And I'm so excited. By the way, we're doing a giveaway this week with you.
That's right.
And you're going to do Botox in an area for someone and do a facial.
Yeah, hydrofacial. That's right.
It's
Yep.
so incredible. I said I want to rig it this time so I can win, but
Yeah.
we won't do that.
Now
and
you
we
said
have
it, now you
another.
can't do
I
that.
know.
You can't do
and
that.
then we also have a cosmetic bag. But I truly think that, like it goes with our business too. Is that anybody that knows Rob knows he's very cost effective and he likes to be careful with our money, and he's tough on me about how much I spend. And I think your prices are fair. when I came to meet with you, my girlfriend who I went with, she asked everybody we know who the best plastic surgeon was in Houston, and your name came up repeatedly. And again, I knew you as Haresh with the hard last name, and I didn't know you were who I was going to see. So you're doing something right, but you can't get from the mountaintops. It's like our attorney said, I can't post online. I helped this person today because you're part of it is being discreet and not
absolutely.
talk. And same for us, who we buy from, who we sell to.
Who's getting engaged?
Yes, we have to be.
They may have that ring in their pocket for 3 months,
But
Oh, wow. Yeah,
I
you
was
just can't say anything.
expecting, so I was expecting your prices to be expensive, but I mean, just a normal Botox is what most people, like for me, I think it's $350, $400.
It depends on how many areas we're doing. Yeah. I got to be honest,
But
I'm terrible with the
I
prices.
thought that that's a very fair price for you being the most respected plastic surgeon. You're not trying to get wealthy off of people, and that's very similar to, like, you're not paying me to be on our show. We just respect each other. We have a respect for one another and what we do, and I feel like that's authentic because your industry, our industry, people are afraid to give us the ring to have it steamed,
Sure,
that
I
someone
bet.
will take
Yeah.
the diamond out.
Yeah.
Like, there's people that ruin your industry, and sadly, you're kind of in that same place. You're plastic surgeon, used car salesman, diamond dealer. Like, we're all in that.
It can be, yeah. I mean, I think.
So talk about that too, like how, because you built my confidence. I trusted you, and to me, that's the biggest thing in giving your face to someone.
I would agree, and I think it goes back to the theme, of your show, authenticity. And we were talking about this when you first brought it up, and it got me thinking about the idea of authenticity because I guess I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it consciously, but yet I hope that my entire life is based on that. When I really thought about it, right? I mean, I think hopefully
Yes.
we're trying to find some truth in who we are and presenting that and living an authentic life. And so, I think people can figure that out. And I've you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell, and I remember reading one of his books a while back called Blink. I don't know if you
We
came
haven't
across
read
that
that
one.
yet, but
And
next road trip, that's a good one.
and yeah, because it's one of the premises is that we humans can make decisions in very fractions of seconds, right? I mean, just it's almost like you just sort of know. And he goes into figuring out, well, how do you just know? There's some science behind it, probably, and there is, but I think that when you're talking about finding people to trust and getting that word out, I think that's where Houston shines, honestly, because Houston is a town that I've found. I'm from New York, born and raised. We moved here about 11 years ago now, and I'm so blessed and grateful that my practice has been able to grow the way it has organically and mostly based on word of mouth, right? People sharing that. And I think that just like your business, I'd imagine, it's people figure out who's real, who's not, who has your best interests at heart, and they're willing to share that. So even though, yeah, absolutely, we discreetness is a must for what we do, and it's a priority for us. But I'm grateful that a lot of our patients have told their friends or their friends' friends and kind of spread the word. And I imagine that's how your business has grown. Can't be much different than that. In a
One
lot of
happy
ways.
customer can tell 2 or 3 good people, but one unhappy customer tells 10 or 20 or 30 people.
Yep.
So it's just best, do your best, treat them fair and honest,
Yeah,
and it grows.
absolutely.
It's like the luckiest people we know are the hardest workers. You work hard, you be fair, and this is a wonderful city. I moved here 25 years ago. Lived here as a child, but I'm a Yankee by birth. Grew up in Chicago, but I mean, this city's amazing. And we talked about this also with the Floyd protests that we had downtown, and we are the most diverse large city in America, and we had almost zero problems because everyone gets along and everybody tries to get along. And that's what I find amazing. I mean, I love Houston except for June, July, and August.
Honestly, it's a small tax to pay in my mind for all the benefits you get out of it.
Absolutely.
And it sounds again cliche, but it truly is the people, right? It's not a very, forgive me, but it's not a very pretty city in terms of coming to visit as a tourist, and we have incredible resources. And I've had friends, my friends from New York, where I grew up in the city. They felt so bad for me when I was moving down.
We're
here.
like,
I mean,
"Poor
really,
you."
they really. It was like a funeral song when I was coming down here, and it was incredible how quickly I realized that this is a pretty great place. And I think a lot of people, you hear that story all the time, right? I mean, from people who've moved here from somewhere else, and I think they realized, like, I'm not coming back. And I was like, I don't want to come back. This is a great place. And when they'd visit the first few times, they couldn't see it. And people who've come down, I have good friends who've come down, once a year now, 8, 9 years in a row, and they love it because it takes time. And you realize it's because it's the people you get to know and you meet. And to your point about, businesses that are able to grow in authenticity or being genuine and being truthful with what they offer, that's, if you do that, Houston, the people of Houston, I think, help you grow, and they're going to support you. And they really, if you're a good person and you're honest and you're going to work hard and put your nose to the grindstone, more often than not, people are willing to go out of their way to help you, in my experience.
Yes, and I think that's what I see as the opportunity. We've had so much time to watch Netflix and like dive into so many crazy shows.
Spend time together. I haven't been on a plane since January.
Yeah.
We haven't traveled, and I normally would travel once a week, 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
definitely the dynamics of our relationship. But I feel like, and you can look at our podcast guest and the guest that we had on in my prior podcast, we are all, when you talk about different races too, like, I don't think of you as my friend of a different race. Like, it doesn't even occur to me. But we've watched so many shows that talk about race. One in particular was My Brilliant Friend, which was about Italians growing up. And so it brought up in the 50s and how they were discriminated against. And then even within the group of the national, it gave me insight into my dad's family unit, because some things are inherent. And then in listening to Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about how the Italians were herdsmen, and that made them want to fight more because people would come in and steal from their herd when they were sleeping at night, and it made them have that passion and fight in them. Is there, you chose to marry
another
Indian woman. So tell us, is that a part of your heritage? Is that, like, are you raising your kids? Does it, because we talked to Bella about being Italian, but we don't talk to her about as much being Czech. Like, is being Indian defining in your family as part of the heritage? Is it traditions? Because in food, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously part of who I am because I just grew up. My parents are immigrants, right? So I'm a first generation American. I was born in New York, and they moved, 1970. And so, absolutely. I mean, that's part of how you grow up. I mean, it's, for me personally, I had sort of this dichotomy because I had, my family. We had family friends who were Indian. My dad's a physician; he's an allergist, and so. But we had plenty of friends who were not Indian. I went to these schools in New York because I went to prep schools growing up, and I was usually one of the few Indians in school, but it never was something, I was aware of it, I guess, and I knew I had this other part of my life, but I guess I'm not sure why. It just never really struck me as odd. It just felt like this is how I'm growing up and learning how to bridge the two, and obviously my parents didn't go to college here, so when I went to school, there were certain things that they were nervous about, not having, joining a fraternity or doing things that, their idea of fraternity was only what they learned from Animal House, right? So they were freaking out.
They're like, what are you going to do, Haresh?
Yeah, and so there was, there's certainly some of those struggles, and, I'm sure if you went back to, some of the writing I did in high school, I know there was a lot of writing about this issue, this clash between the two cultures, and it was something that, in fact, my college application essay, when you apply to college, I'm thinking about this because I have a junior who's going to have to start thinking about this next year, and he was asking me what I wrote about, and he thought it was the dumbest thing ever, and maybe it was, but it worked, I guess. But I remember, this. So at that point in my life, I was thinking about these two worlds, right? Where I'd go visit my family in India, my dad's parents. My dad grew up on a small farm. It's a village of like maybe less than 2,000 people, and the story I never, I kind of recount in this in the essay was how when I was 6 or 7, I go to visit my grandparents, and in a small town, electricity's out half the time, and I had to go to the bathroom, and my aunt's like, okay, sure, it's right down here, and she leads me in this room, and I go in this room, it's outside, and it's literally like an outhouse. There's no indoor plumbing. No one warned me of it. No one explained how it worked. So I just freaked out, and I just didn't go to the bathroom for about a week almost, and I got sick. And they took me to the doctor, and they started, they were like dying. They thought it was hilarious that I didn't tell anyone about it. I was fearful of how to use the bathroom properly there, but it sort of, to me, it was part of my life. Understanding this is where part of my family had come from, and how discordant it must have been for my dad to come from that world and make a life for us
in New York City.
Yeah,
it is.
It's like the traditional immigrant story, right?
And as far as we still need to go, there is definitely police brutality. There is definitely underlying discrimination. It's been interesting to me to watch these old films or films about times that are different, like the 1700s. They were just fighting to live. They were literally in sword fights. I mean, and the opportunities we have and what we have here is that I just want people to feel that opportunity, that you are the son of an immigrant who is now the most respected plastic surgeon in Houston.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible journey, and we need to continue that, and we need to keep having conversations about
this is the greatest country in the
but
world
this
of what
is,
we can do.
in my
Couldn't
opinion, the
agree more.
greatest country in the world. And Rob deals with so many Indian diamond dealers. I couldn't even watch Slumdog Millionaire. Like, it made me so sad. I'm good friends with Sippy Khurana, and she was so generous. She wrote my recommendation for Women of Distinction. She is one of the most admirable. I don't know if you know her.
Yep.
And she is, for what she's done and how her family overcame. And then also Rushi was of LCA, Lights, Camera, Action. She was in Calcutta. She talked about arranged marriages. And even
Contract
Rob,
of marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob even has some friends that the families are still trying to do that. Was that an issue with you and Sushma,
no.
or did they bless it, or was it not
No,
that
I think
kind of a
you
feel?
asked a question before. No, I think they were. So it's funny because I, like I said, I was usually one of the few Indians in my school or social circles, sort of growing up, and not that I didn't, we had plenty of family friends, people that we got to see who were Indian, of course, but so she was actually the first Indian girl I ever dated.
Oh, wow.
And vice versa, actually, it turns out, for her. And I think, I hope she's not watching, but the story, but I, it actually turned out to freak me out because I mean, it was one of those stories where, there's things where I was not that much of a romantic in the sense of, when you know, but I knew, right? Until it happens to you, you think it's just something people say in movies. But I knew that she was the one.
Aww.
Very quickly. And honestly, when I felt that way, I was like, oh man, I'm just starting med school. I'm
ready
making
for
fun of
this.
So,
I don't want this to happen right now.
Kind of. And so, the fact that, she was Indian, I'm like, oh my God, does it mean we have to get married? And I freaked out, to be honest with you. And then she, of course, just slapped me on the head. She's like, what makes you think that I'm going to want to get married to you?
She's like, I'm a doctor. I'm pretty much okay for now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, certainly it made parts of our lives much easier to have parents who kind of grew up in the same culture. And so I grew up, in New York City, but most of my childhood growing up was in Staten Island, where there were lots of Italians. And in fact, one of the jokes, I didn't even understand it when I was younger, was that, if you're, your name must end in a vowel if you live in Staten Island, right? Because you're Italian. And I was like, my name ends in a vowel.
Sound like,
well,
you kind of.
So I never understood the joke, but it's interesting, knowing lots of Italians growing up and as a kid, and then there was a lot of similarities in terms of family values and family structure and understanding the strength that comes from families and
family guilt.
Oh yeah, that's an art form.
That's real. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is so real.
Italian guilt might be stronger than Catholic guilt. And then you put the two together.
put the two
with
together.
their family. Wow.
I went to Georgetown too, so I know.
Okay,
both.
yes.
All right, it's 10:45, but we started 5 minutes late. But the last thing I want to ask you about, which I have found to be so crazy, is we just made a deal with our daughter, Bella, who's 13, to get off TikTok and to pick back up Snapchat. And one of the things she kept talking about with TikTok is these young girls who get plastic surgery and want to do rhinoplasty, and so and that they're even talking about it. Like, I grew up not loving my nose, and we talked about Jennifer Grey and what a horrible mistake she made by changing her nose because everyone knew her
For
from
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Footloose.
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing, sorry.
Yep, and it changed, and then Renee
Zellweger,
Zellweger too. So let's talk about like the influence of social media on kids wanting to have their nose broken so they can have a nose job.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. I mean, it seems when you go back to our earlier part of the conversation about just it's purely a physical thing. You're trying to achieve some kind of perfection, some kind of ideal. Nose jobs are really one of the most challenging parts of what I do. Not just because technically it's a hard procedure, right, to make sure you get the outcome that you want. But it's one of the few things when you think about it, unless it truly was broken, right, where it's crooked now and you're trying to just get it back to where it used to be. A lot of people who are looking for, changes in their nose, they're looking for something that they never had before. Right? When you come in because your neck is droopy or your eyes are heavy, you just want to kind of go back to how it used to look, right? You want to kind of, in your mind at least, right? You're trying to just go back a little bit to where it used to be. Whereas for rhinoplasty, you want something that you never had ever. And really, when you think about it, that's a challenging thing to make sure that what they have in their mind is what you can deliver and what's possible. And so that gets even harder to do the younger they are, right? Because what do you really know about yourself? What do you know what you're going to want when you're older? So it's not uncommon, and I'm not saying it's wrong to have nose surgery in your 16, 17, when you're younger. I personally,
I'm out here to say I think it's wrong.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm not speaking to other doctors who think, it's malpractice that they're doing it. I just meant I personally try my hardest, and I don't really encourage children who are that young to get it done that young because I don't think they know what they're looking for. Sometimes they grow into their face. Sometimes they realize it's not that important. Now, your question about whether social media is fueling this, absolutely, and I think I'm not in favor of that. I think it's a very dangerous trend where, you feel like you have to, because everyone else is doing this, your lips have to be like Kylie's or your nose has to be like whoever. I mean, that is the opposite of what I want to do, right? It's not about you looking like someone else. You have to look like yourself by definition. A better version of it, a more confident version of it. It's really for you. It's not for anyone else. And that makes me nervous. The other thing that makes me really nervous in plastic surgery are trends. Right? When things are popular right now and you're doing a procedure that's permanent, that makes me very nervous because a lot of these things are undoable. And now you're stuck with this, especially if you make a decision when you're, 18 or 16 or whatever to do something that changes for the rest of your life. I've seen people who come in, unfortunately, they want to go back to what it used to be like. I was like, I wish I'd never done this. I'm like, it's too late. I'm sorry. You can't reverse. You can't undo some things.
Okay, and I lied. I have one more question because I thought this was so fascinating. It's when I came in to talk to you about because I've heard from different people different times is when you have your first facelift. Will you talk about the elasticity in your face and what you shared with me? Because I thought that was so fascinating and it made me feel like, okay, that makes sense.
So there are a lot of people who come in saying, I've heard you need your first lift at 40 or 50. And this is a philosophical thing. I'm not saying I'm right
You're
or
not
wrong,
right.
but this is
what
how
your
I
belief.
believe. Right. The thing to understand when you're talking about facelifts and those kind of procedures, you're really talking about dealing with gravity issues, right? The sagging, if you will. And so you're not stopping gravity, right? So you can have a facelift, but you're still going to continue to age. So you will eventually notice some changes again in terms of some of the laxity or the looseness. And the point of that is simply that you're not going to look the same after your facelift for the rest of your life, obviously. You're going to keep aging. So I kind of think of it, there's a sweet spot where you have enough aging to do your first lift, if you will, right, to do a lift and get the longest result out of it. Meaning, if you do it when someone comes in and they have some issues at 42 or 43 or 45, whatever it is, right? They're still in their 40s or even early 50s, and they have a little bit of the aging process. Sure, you could do a lift. It would look phenomenal. It would look natural, but you can only lift so much at that age, right? You're not gonna you can't lift extra because, hey, you know what? In another 5 or 6 years, you're gonna age more, and you want to preemptively stop that from happening. So I think there is too young of an age, and that depends on your genetics. It depends on your anatomy. It depends on
Also
did you
climate
smoke?
too. Houston being a more humid city versus if you're in
Dry
Phoenix,
skin.
Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge
I mean,
difference.
that speaks to the skin that changes. Absolutely. So, so it's not one size fits all. But so I don't think, I'm 45 or 50, I need my first facelift is necessarily true. Now, I do facelift sometimes on people in their 50s, early 50s, but usually because they have some anatomical issues that make their jowls look more exaggerated, right? Maybe they have a weaker chin or things like that where they're seeing this quicker than someone else might see it at that age. So I don't have a number saying, hey, you have to be this age to do a facelift, or it's too late if you don't get to a certain age. It's something you have to customize from person to person. I will say, for me personally, in my practice, I don't really do a lot of them in people in their 40s, for example. I think there are also a lot of non-surgical options now that exist that can help slow that down. All therapy is one of them. Face tight. There are a bunch of
therapy.
Yeah.
I feel like it just lifts everything. And this afternoon we're going to do microneedling. I've done one. You recommend 4 sessions or 5?
to start.
To start.
Yeah, I mean, microneedling is one of these treatments that you can use to help stimulate collagen in the skin. So it's a pretty easy way of just helping maintain your skin, right? It does something that you can't just get with skincare, but it helps keep building collagen and helps soften up some of the fine lines. And if you have acne scarring, it works great to help soften some of that. So it's sort of like exercise, right? I think it's good for your skin. The reason we usually encourage people kind of get the ball rolling with 3 or 4 sessions is just you're not going to see much with one treatment, right? So people who just do one, say, I didn't see anything, they're less likely to do it again. It takes time. It's incremental improvement.
Just like
correct.
going to the gym. You can't go to the gym one day and see a difference.
That's correct.
So I'll
Or
be
if you-
posting some of that live a little bit later.
Great.
And I've done some before pictures. And sadly, we're out of time. But I mean, we could talk to you so much more. I mean, you've done great things for people. Your website,
Charity work,
Yeah.
phenomenal
Balaj,
charity work.
Yeah.
Balaj Center,
BalajCenter.com.
BalajCenter.com. Again,
It
follow
was
us.
easier than Yalamanchili Center, so I figured
Exactly, because I'm like, how many L's? Where are the L's? How many I's?
that's how I learned the alphabet as a
exactly.
kid. But yeah.
Danae Cangelosi Cremosta, come on.
So,
Spelling
yeah.
nightmare. Vintage Contessa, much easier. Thank you so much.
Thanks
We
for having
love
me.
you.
Yeah.
So fun. Let's plan
Ditto.
a salmon dinner with John and Sushma, and we'll have some fun. And guys, we will come to you next Thursday, 10 o'clock, and Mondays at 1 for Facebook Live, and Wednesday, Wacky Watch Wednesday.
We're wacky, not the watches.
Exactly. Thanks.
All right.